Hi there, this is Jenny from The Sewing Palace, and today I'm going to show you how to make a face mask. First, I want to say that we are in the middle of a pandemic, so that is why I'm coming to you from my sewing room. I know these videos last for quite some time, but it is just a tutorial to give you some tips on how to make a face mask. The pattern is been published by our local hospital, which is called St. Peter's Health. So I would like to thank St. Peter's Health for publishing a pattern that would make a face mask that best suits their needs. So I'm just going to go through the pattern so that I can help you walk through the process. All right, so you need to collect a couple of supplies. Most of these supplies you will have at home. Remember, we are making this face mask to support our local community, and the pattern is a great resource, and that's what they've developed that will suit them best. So let's follow the pattern, and I'm just going to guide you through the process. You'll want to collect some fabric and a few supplies. The fabric needs to be 100% cotton, and you'll want to pre-wash it. So when you pre-wash it, use a hot hot water and laundry detergent. Remember, when you pre-wash, you always get these extra strings, so you just want to trim those off when you're done. And then you'll want some either cotton twill tape, or I'm going to show you how to make something for ties. So that could be a way that the mask can be attached by tying it to their head. Or there is the option of elastic, which will make little ear flaps that will go over the ears. And then some wire that will allow the top of the face mask to go bend around the top of the nose to get a better seal. So pipe cleaners, bendable wire. I know some of you have made quite a few of these masks, so I'd love to see your comments about what resources you used, but you'll need 100% cotton fabric, a way to attach it, either ties or elastic, and some wire. You'll also want to use 100% cotton thread. So collect those supplies and come on back. All right, so the other thing that you need is the pattern. It is on St. Peter's website, but I'm going to give you a quick way to get it because I have put it on our website too. It's TheSewingPalaceBernina.com, and right on the home page there's a red bar that says What's New. Right below that there is Want to Make a Face Mask, and it says Click here for pattern. So once you click on that, you'll have a one-page document that is the pattern that St. Pete's published, and it says making a face mask. So go ahead and print the pattern, collect your supplies, wash your fabric, and come back. You've collected your supplies and you washed your fabric, and now you're going to cut it. The first thing that you want to do is you're going to get all these strings off. The other tip I have for you, if you have an overlocker, you can serge this before you wash it and you won't get all of these threads. That's also a service we can provide at the Sewing Palace. If you're ordering fabric online and it's made for mass, you can just send us a note with your order and we will cut this with the serger so you can easily wash it. The first thing that you want to do is press it, get it ready, and then you're going to cut an 8.5 by 15-inch piece out of this fabric. So I'm going to press it and get started with that. For those of you that have watched my videos before, I do like to use starch alternatives. For this project, I do not recommend using any starch. You want to make sure this is nice and clean and that there's no scents and that it isn't going to bother anybody when they go to put it on or over their filter mask. So just get it pressed so that you can cut your 8.5-inch by 15-inch square. I've got my fabric all laid out on my my mat, and I'm going to cut an 8.5 by 15-inch rectangle out of that. At this point, I don't have a ruler that's that big, so I'm just going to cut it a little bit bigger. So what I'm doing is I've lined it up close to the 0 mark on the left-hand side. So I've got it kind of covering up the 0 mark. And then I'm going to measure over a little past 15, and I'm going to take my ruler and line up along a line, and then I will cut a piece that's bigger. The other thing I'm paying attention to is how much I'm cutting up. So I need 8.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I really don't need to cut that high. So I'm just going to line that up and cut a little bit bigger piece. So I moved to my left hand just to make it easier for you to see. You don't have to cut with both hands, that's no big deal. Then I'm going to slide my ruler down, line it up along my already cut edge, and finish that cut. So now I have a piece that's a little bit big, and I can take that straight edge and line it up on the 0 mark on my left, or your right, depending on which hand you're cutting with. And now I can use my mat to do the measuring, or my ruler, depending on how big a ruler you have. So I'm going to count over to 15 on my mat, and I'm going to cut. Then I'm going to cut the other direction, which needs to be 8.5. Again, you can line it up on the 0 mark and cut to the 8.5. So I'm going to do that with a little bit longer ruler, pardon my reach, and line that up so that I'm cutting 8.5. All right, so now I have a piece that's 8.5 by 15. Now that you have your piece, which is 15 inches this way, 8.5 that way, you're going to hem these two short ends. So one way that you can do that is if you have an overlocker. I'll show you that real quick. And then the other way that you can do it is take that end to your ironing board and press it over a small amount, so like an 1/8 or a 1/4, and then again, then that edge will be finished so it won't ravel when it's washed. First we'll do the overlocker. So I have my overlocker all threaded up. It's got 4 spools of cotton thread, and it's going to be set up for what's called a 4-thread overlock, and it's just going to run along the edge. And then I'm going to do the other edge. So that's the way that you can finish it with an overlocker. Then I'm going to show you how to finish it with just a zigzag stitch or a hem. All right, we're going to get ready to do a zigzag stitch. So you want to select your zigzag stitch on your sewing machine and then put on a presser foot that's compatible with a zigzag stitch. I've threaded both my bobbin and my top with 100% cotton thread, and I'm going to just do a simple little zigzag stitch. So there's my zigzag stitch and my finished edge. If you want to use the double fold method, you certainly may. You might want to cut your fabric a little wider because you are using about 1/4 of an inch extra fabric. So that would just mean a straight stitch, a double fold hem, and you would just sew down that edge. I usually do it from the wrong side so I can see where this side of my fold is, and I just sew down that edge. So there's 2 options, a double fold hem, a zigzag stitch with your sewing machine, or if you have an overlocker, you can use the overlocking option on your serger. So this is a 4-thread overlock. So just finish those 2 short ends that are 8.5 inches. You're ready to start sewing your face mask. This is the 8.5 inch finished end, and you're going to lay those right sides together so that they both match up. And then you're going to mark a mark 2 inches in from each side. Now that you have the marks, you're going to sew, leaving this as an opening. So you're going to start, go forwards and back, go to the line, forwards and back, skip this part, go forwards and back, and go to the end. We're going to press this seam open. So from your ironing board, You'll open this up and you'll have that opening, and then you'll press this seam open. You're now going to top stitch one side of the opening. What that means is you're going to be sewing one of these flaps to the other piece and holding it in place. You don't want to sew through all the layers, so it's a little tricky to get through a small tube like this, but you don't want to sew through all the layers. So when you top stitch, it's a straight stitch, and you're just going to feed this through and catch just that one side, and make sure you're not catching the bottom of the pouch. So work your way to the other side. I have it turned right side out. I have top stitched just the one side, so they're stitching just along this side and not the other. We're next going to go to the ironing board and do some pressing. All right, here's the opening right here. This is the side that's top stitched. I'm going to just press that so it lays flat in the center. I'm not pressing the sides. And I'm next going to mark a mark. So here's the opening, here's the top stitch side. You're going to mark a 1/2 inch up from that seam. So here is my ruler, there's my seam, and I'm going to be a 1/2 inch up from the seam. So there's a mark, and then do the same thing on the other side. So just to review, here's my seam, there's my opening, here's my top stitch side, and I'm a 1/2 inch up. What that 1/2 inch is for is to fold on that line here and here, and you're going to press that so it lays flat. So you've got your top stitch edge here. We've pressed it. This is the 1/2 inch mark, and we've pressed it flat with our iron. And now I'm going to sew all the way around the project. So I'll use a couple of clips to hold it in place. Then you'll want to sew all the way around the project. I'm going to sew all the way around the project. The seam that I'm using right now is about 1/8 inch. So on this presser foot, it's the inside of the toe. If you have needle down, this is a perfect opportunity to sink your needle down into the fabric, lift your presser foot, and then pivot. You're now at the point where you're going to insert wire into this little sleeve. I've marked the center of this. It was 8.5, so I've marked a small mark at 4.25. The pattern suggests bread ties, flat aluminum wire, pipe cleaners, or floral wire. And you'll want 5 inches in length, so I'm just going to measure 5 inches and cut it with wire cutters. And then I might want to mark the center of that so that I can see where to line that up. So if that's 5, that's going to be 2.5. So I've got a little mark there. And then when you go to slide it in, you want to just put it into that sleeve, slide it in place, and then line up your center marks so that the wire is even on both sides. And then you'll fold it over and you'll top stitch it in place so it can't come out. The other option is folding that pipe cleaner in half, folding the ends over so that you have a little bit more sturdiness. So try it both ways and see how it works. I've got my wire inserted into the channel, and I chose to use the wire that was double folded on the ends, so it's a little bulky, and I've clipped it in place with some Wonder Clips. I've also switched to a zipper foot because I can get real close to a bumpy edge and the foot won't tilt up. A normal presser foot will want to kick over to the side because there's a bump. So when you've got a zipper foot on, you can get real close to that. So I've started at the edge. The other thing about a zipper foot is I've moved my needle over. I'm on a Bernina, but if you're on another branded machine, you'll just want that needle closest to the metal or that little zip tie that you've put in there, and move the foot to that side. So I'm just going to top stitch. There's that little bulk of the wire trying to push my foot to the side, and the zipper foot is working perfectly for this. Let's look at our progress so far. Here's our project. Here is the wire that we just inserted. It's all encased. And then we have an extra pocket, so you can actually add maybe an additional filter if that's needed, but you have an extra pocket. We're going to do 3 pleats down the side, and you want those pleats to be folded down from that edge, and then you can clip them in place or pin them in place and clip all the way down. So I'm going to work on the pleats right now. I've got my pleats all folded and clipped, and now I'm just going to press so that they stay in place and get them all flattened out. Flip it over and do the same from the other side. So I've got my pleats all done, and now I'm going to sew down the sides here and here to hold the pleats in place. I've now got my pleats folded. I've switched to a regular presser foot if you use the zipper foot in the last step, and my needle is in the center, and I'm going to sew down these pleats. I'm going to sew in the direction that the pleats are pointing towards me, and then they won't flip on you. So we'll just sew down each side. I'm getting ready to sew on the other side, so the pleats are facing me. I actually have the bulk of the fabric on the inside, so I can pull my clips away and make sure the pleats don't flip on me. Now that you've got the inside of the mask completed, you have some decisions to make on how you want it to attach. You could use elastic loops that will go over the ears, or you could make bias tape that would turn into ties. If you're going to make elastic loops, then you make a casing or a tube for the elastic to go through, and then you insert the elastic through that. Most of what's available is not a 1/4 of an inch elastic, so this is something I'm going to show you how to use if you'd like. Or you could also make a casing and insert some ties that could go around. They recommend about 40 inches per side for the ties. The other thing that you can do is make your own bias tape, and that will wrap around the edge. So let me show you the bias tape option. This piece here is cut 2 inches wide. I folded it in half to find the center point and pressed it. Then you open it back up and fold each raw edge in to the center and press. Then you fold it in half again. So that's a piece of homemade bias tape, and if you're going to do that and make the ties and finish the edge, this needs to be 40 inches long. You'll then find the center point of your 40-inch strip and line it up so that it meets the center of your mask. You'll take and you'll insert it in the center, and then you'll start sewing on the long end, and you'll sew all the way down through the mask and continue. Then you can tie each end of the strip to finish it. Another option is to make a little tube or casing along the side. So that would be using little pieces of fabric that go along the edge. These pieces are cut 2 1/4 by about 5 1/4. And what you do is you lay them along the wrong edge, and you have a little hanging off that edge. You're going to clip it, and then you're going to let it run along that edge, and then you're going to cut so that it's just a little extra over that edge. So right here I'm going to go a little past that and just cut the excess fabric off. Then that edge will get folded over as well, and I'm going to clip it. I'll do the same thing to the other side, and we'll sew through each side here and on the other side as well. So I'll go ahead and attach those pieces. I've got my casing or my little tubing pieces that I've attached on each side. It's right sides together, folded over each edge just a little bit. You will have a little excess fabric that you'll need to cut off on these strips that you're adding. And then we're going to sew here and here with a straight stitch. Now we've finished sewing each end. I actually went back and did a little bit bigger seam, which was about 3/8 of an inch. And now you're going to fold this up and away from the face mask. And I'm going to flip it over and show you kind of what you're going to be working on over here. You're going to fold these two ends in, and I'm going to just press them so that they stay in place. And then you're going to fold down so that you have a piece like that, and then you're going to fold it in half. Then you're going to sew that down, and you've got a nice little tube to put either elastic or twill tape in. I've got each edge pressed and folded, and I'm ready to sew down the edge to make a tube for either the elastic or for twill tape. So I'm going to switch my presser foot. This is called an edge stitch foot. You can do this with any other foot. This just gives me a little extra guidance. So I've switched my foot, and the nice thing about this foot is it has a little blade right down the center, and then I move my needle over so that it is in just the right place to grab the right amount of fabric, and then I use the edge of the foot as my guide. So I'm going to go forwards and back and go all the way down to the bottom. Do the same thing for the other side. If you'd like to make elastic loops that go around the ears, you'll need about 9 inches of 1/4 inch elastic. The challenge with 1/4 inch elastic is we have depleted many of the resources here. So this one we have quite a bit of. We've been able to get this in rolls at the shop. And this is a fold over elastic, so it has a center point. You could cut down the center or you could fold it over. I'm going to show you folding it over. So there's not a very shimmery side, and then there's a side that's shimmery. So this I'm going to consider the wrong side. This is a product called 505 acid-free spray. So I'm just spraying it just gently, and then once it's sprayed, this is sticky. It does dissipate with air, and it goes away with laundering. But the nice thing about that is I can then fold this in half, and it sticks to itself, and it doesn't shift and move. And then I can top stitch down that whole strip, and it will now be 1/4 inch wide. So now I have 1/4 inch wide elastic. I've got one of my ear loops done. This is called a bodkin. You could use a safety pin as well. So I'm just going to attach that, and it just snaps on like so. And then you're going to thread that through the channel so that you have elastic on each end. Now you've got the elastic through the channel. You can either tie it or sew it. I think it'll be a little less bulky if I overlap that and sew it. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got the elastic threaded through, and I've sewn through that, and then you'll just pull through that raw edge or that edge of elastic that you don't want to show, and it's going to hide itself into the channel. Here's another option if you don't want to do the elastic ear flaps. You could thread through some cord or make your own. This was made out of a 2-inch strip, folded in, half in the center and then half again. And then you could thread that through. If you need something skinnier, this was a 1-inch strip that's in half and half again, like that, so you could thread that through. If you don't want to go through the trouble of making that, you can get cotton twill tape. This is 100% cotton, and it's used in surgical gowns. We sell it by the yard at the store. It's also nice for ties for pajamas or drawstring bags. So I'm going to cut that to a little point and make it a little easier to thread through and attach the bodkin. I've got my cotton twill tape attached to the bodkin, and then I'm feeding the bodkin through the channel, and then I'll thread it through and have extra on each end to make a tie. You could then secure the tie so it doesn't slide with your sewing machine if you'd like. So in review, we made a face mask out of cotton fabric. We had the option of doing the twill tape ties, an elastic ear band, or making your own ties out of your own fabric. Out of something like this. You could finish it over the edge using that piece, finding the center, and then covering it and sewing down the whole thing. Please put in the comments your favorite method. If you're a healthcare provider, we'd like to know what's comfortable and what is working best for you. Right now, for me, I think I'm going to cut off the elastic and put the twill tape on the other side, and then I'll model it for you in a moment. All right, we did it. We made a face mask. Mine has the metal stay right here. It's fitting real nice. I've got cotton ties and I have the casing. It fits pretty well. I want to thank St. Peter's Health for making the pattern, and I wish you all luck. I also wish you health. This is Jenny from the Sewing Palace. Thanks for joining me.